Karen and Robert Scott Florida Garden is actually made up of a whole series of gardens, including the garden that we're in right now, which is the Naples Garden Club Idea Garden. One of the things that people don't realize when they move to Florida is that you can actually grow beautiful roses here. We think of this as being a place for tropical plants, but roses actually can do very, very well here and flower profusely during the wintertime. The other reason we built this idea garden was when I first moved here, I'd lived up north my entire life. And when you live up north in Canada or places like Cleveland, we grow tomatoes in the summertime. And I was absolutely amazed to discover that you can't grow tomatoes in Florida in the summertime. You have to grow them in the wintertime. So I thought if I didn't know that, there's a lot of other people moving to Florida that have no idea what you can and can't grow. So that's the genesis of the idea garden. One of the things that's fun about growing down here is you can do really unusual things. If you take a look at this Tillandsia Wall that we created, it's essentially just fishing line, heavy-duty fishing line, and we've glue gunned the Tillandsias to it, and it's actually grown in now to create a really kind of interesting element in our lanai setup that we have here. It's also important for people to understand what kind of vegetables they can grow. So we grow all sorts of vegetables here during the wintertime, cabbages and kales and tomatoes and beans and all sorts of different things. So we do harvest these. We harvest them once a week, and we take them actually to a food bank nearby. And so we feel like it's a double bang for our buck. We're able to show people what can be grown here and also to see that those fruits be well used. I would just mention in behind me, you can actually see fruit trees that are being espaliered. These espaliers are ways of growing fruit trees in 2 dimensions instead of 4. So we can actually grow them on a fence like this. They're very productive, and they also create a really interesting architectural element to the garden as well. We're still in the Scott Florida Garden, and this time we're going to take a look at the Wildflower Meadow. This Wildflower Meadow is the largest native plant garden in South Florida. And it's ringed by some of my favorite palms. These are sable palms, and they're actually the state palm. And it's got some kind of crazy plants in here too. This, believe it or not, is actually a cactus. This is a native cactus to Florida, which is epiphytic. And when we say epiphytic, it means it grows up in trees. And it's right next to a beautiful Tillandsia, just starting to come into flower. And again, these are very, very common plants, particularly here in South Florida. Now, we're going to take a walk right into the meadow itself. It's interesting because the meadow looks kind of unkempt because it is all native plants. However, it's interesting because we probably have more time in this garden per square foot of human effort than we do in any other garden in the place. And it's because it's very difficult to create something by humans that nature does so well. So trying to compete with nature is a very tough thing to do. One of my favorite plants in here is something called the blanket flower. And it's a nice bright colored flower that grows all the way from Florida up into the Midwest. And it's also called Gaillardia. So it's one of the many wonderful flowers that we have here in the Scott Florida Garden. And this garden is a great place to learn about native plants. And Floridians don't use a lot of native plants in their landscapes, but we're really trying to encourage them to, because they're great sources of food for things like butterflies and hummingbirds, and of course other animals that have intimate relationships with these as well. Anyway, now we're going to go to the enabling garden. Welcome to the Buehler Family Foundation Enabling Garden. The idea with this garden is really to enable people of all abilities to garden. So if you're like me and getting a little squeaky in the knees, it's nice to have a garden like this. You can sit in the edge and work in the garden. For people who are in wheelchairs or walkers, a raised bed like this works really, really well. You notice we've got a very narrow top on this, which allows people to reach in a little bit further into the garden. We do a lot of programs in this garden, and things working with children with autism, working with people with Alzheimer's disease, also people who are visually challenged. And this garden in particular, this is a wall garden. It's a wonderful place for people who are visually challenged to explore the world of plants. There's all sorts of wonderful textures here, and it's at all different elevations. So depending on a person's height or whether they're in a wheelchair or a walker or whatever, there's all sorts of things for them to explore in this wall. We also have a wonderful exhibit of tools that we use in the gardens. And these are adaptive tools, which means they allow people with limited reach or limited strength in their hands to continue to garden. And we have this open all the time. It's a little cheeky hut here, but let's take a look at some of the things that we have inside here. We have reaching tools and cutting tools and gripping tools and all sorts of things that people can learn from to be able to garden in their own gardens. As we feel that gardening is one of the most important activities a person can pursue. It's great for your physical health. It's great for your mental health too. Now we're going to go take a look at something else that's good for your mental health, the Labyrinth. We actually have used this garden with different classes to really explain to people how to go through the process of meditation, and so they allow their brains and their minds just to relax a little bit. But as you can see, it's used for many different things.